cette opportunité pour rendre hommage au... Ok, il n'y a pas de souci. Ok, il n'y a pas de souci. C'est l'indépendance qui nous a été accordée par la France, dans les conditions que nous connaissons. Je saisis cette opportunité pour rendre hommage aux pères fondateurs pour qui la dépendance était inacceptable et ont fait recours aux armes pour bouter hors de nos frontières les colons. Ils ont sacrifié de leur sang, de leur famille pour cela. Chaque fois que j'ai l'opportunité, leur rendre hommage est quelque chose de très important. Maintenant, la deuxième partie, qui avait la possibilité de choisir entre le Nigeria et le Cameroun. Les Nations Unies qui en administraient cette partie avaient donc soumis au référendum la partie qui était gouvernée par les Britanniques, le Cameroun, le nord-ouest et le sud-ouest. Mais il se trouve qu'on ne leur a jamais demandé la possibilité d'exister en tant que tel. On leur a simplement demandé de choisir, de se rattacher ou au Cameroun ou au Nigeria. La partie nord de cette partie a choisi, bon, dans des conditions pas claires, la partie du nord a choisi de rester avec le Nigeria, tandis que la partie sud a choisi donc de rester avec le Cameroun. Donc déjà à ce point, il y a un malentendu, sinon une démarche conflictuelle. Les sécessionnistes disent qu'ils ont été floués. Ils ont été floués parce qu'on ne leur a jamais demandé s'ils acceptaient de constituer un État. Pour les Britanniques, pour les Français, pour les Nations Unies, cet État ne pouvait pas être viable. C'est pour cette raison qu'on ne leur a pas demandé la possibilité de constituer leur État. Okay? Donc, le référendum a été organisé. L'immense majorité de ceux donc du Sud avaient choisi donc de rester. Mais sur la base, sur une base acceptée par les uns et les autres. Donc, le fédéralisme avec des concessions mutuelles, le bilinguisme et tout ce qui va avec. Voyez-vous? Donc, à partir de ce moment-là, tous ceux qui n'étaient pas d'accord, tous ceux qui ont été frustrés de la troisième possibilité, Cameroun, pas Cameroun, constitution de leur État, tous ceux qui n'ont pas eu cette troisième possibilité n'ont jamais validé ce référendum-là. Ils disent donc il faut absolument qu'ils aient leur État, et cet État, ils l'appelaient donc l'Ambazonie. Ok? Donc, voilà, pour ceux qui ne savaient pas, de manière diagonale, la lecture que je pourrais donner et ce qui a été donc la cause. Je disais donc tout le 1er octobre, les sécessionnistes manifestaient clandestinement. Donc, vous connaissez les événements qui ont provoqué donc le déclenchement de la contestation, de la protestation, et ils ont donc saisi cette opportunité pour exiger maintenant l'indépendance de ce qu'ils ont appelé l'Ambazonie. Le nord-ouest et le sud-ouest devaient constituer donc leur État. Et cela en raison des frustrations. Il faut dire qu'il y a eu des manquements, des frustrations, des marginalisations.
Et le grand dialogue national n'a pas été la solution, monsieur le ministre?
Le grand dialogue n'a pas été la solution puisqu'ils n'ont pas déposé les armes. Ils n'ont pas déposé les armes, ça veut donc simplement dire que toutes les conditions, tout ce qu'ils en attendaient n'a pas été mis à leur disposition. C'est donc pour cette raison qu'ils continuent, ils ont continué et continuent encore à manifester. Tout à l'heure, vous avez dit les Ambazoniens ont décidé de me soutenir et qu'ils ont accordé une trêve de 3 jours, donc d'autres disent une semaine. Oui, parce que dans mon programme, je préconise le retour au fédéralisme.
Et vous allez procéder comment? Est-ce que ça sera par référendum, justement?
Attendez. Non seulement le retour au fédéralisme, je libère tous les prisonniers politiques. Quelle que soit la faute qu'ils aient commise, je les libère d'abord pour ceux qui n'ont pas eu du sang entre les mains. Amnistie totale. Mais pour les autres, dans une deuxième phase. Parce qu'il faudrait que les Camerounais sachent exactement qui a fait quoi. Non pas parce qu'on va les condamner, mais il faudrait qu'on leur donne la possibilité de se repentir. de présenter des excuses, de demander pardon à la nation. Et en ce moment-là, le chef de l'État, disposant donc de pouvoirs discrétionnaires dans ce domaine-là, leur accordera également l'amnistie. Donc, la différence que j'ai avec les autres, c'est que, je préconise donc le fédéralisme. La première année, il faut absolument qu'on y pense. La forme de l'État dépend naturellement de l'écosystème, de l'environnement, des frustrations dont les uns et les autres font l'objet. Alors, je mettrai donc en place immédiatement une expertise qui va nous suggérer la forme viable de l'État fédéral, la forme viable économiquement, humainement. Donc, on me mettra, ces experts, ce sera des juristes, ce sera des historiens, des politiciens, et puis la classe politique. C'est tout ce beau monde-là que je mettrai donc autour d'une table pour que de manière ouverte, que les uns et les autres puissent s'exprimer. Une fois donc qu'on aura dégagé la synthèse, la forme de l'État, en ce moment-là, on dira, par exemple, ce que, d'entrée de jeu, ce que nous allons exiger, c'est que toutes les richesses du sous-sol soient la propriété de l'État. Toutes les richesses du sous-sol.
De cet État-là?
De la nation.
La nation camerounaise.
De la nation camerounaise. Toutes les richesses du sous-sol, toutes les richesses minérales, ça appartient à l'État. Disons, ça appartient à la nation.
À la nation, oui.
Okay?
Oui.
Maintenant, quant au privilège à accorder aux uns et aux autres en raison de leur présence sur le terroir, voyez-vous, et de la dégradation de l'environnement, des privilèges doivent leur être accordés. C'est-à-dire, on va leur accorder du revenu de l'exploitation, on pourra leur accorder 5%, 10%, 15%, en fonction de la dégradation de l'environnement, de la lutte contre la pollution et des dommages qu'ils auront subis. Mais pour ce qui est donc de ces richesses-là, il faudrait absolument que ce soit les richesses qui appartiennent.
Welcome to ACN, the Liberation TV of Ambazonia.
In 2016, the world saw an uprising in Ambazonia. The people rose up to demand justice. First, the world wondered what the Anglophone problem was and what it was all about. Then it watched the Anglophone problem transform into Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia War of Liberation. They thought it started in 2016. They thought it was just about the supremacy of one language over another. They thought it was only about the marginalization of the English-speaking people of Cameroon. They thought it was all about 2 cubes of sugar. They thought it was the quest for a disgruntled minority to create another failed state. They were right, because it was the quest of the first democratic state in Africa to reclaim its independence and liberate itself from the tyranny of the most autocratic and corrupt state in Africa. This is when and how it all started. The Chronicles of Ambazonia.
As early as 1938, a branch of Shell Petroleum Company had been granted an exploration license to prospect for oil across Nigeria. It would take Nigeria till 1956 to drill the first commercially viable oil well, a feat that undoubtedly influenced the United Kingdom's interest in integrating southern Cameroons into Nigeria, with the hope that the territory would also be oil-rich. The pace of oil prospecting in the Republic of Cameroon accelerated in the 1960s, leading to the discovery of oil onshore and offshore, the coastal areas of West Cameroon, by ELF, the French oil conglomerate. As good as it was to have discovered significant reserves of oil onshore and offshore, the state of West Cameroon, the Republic of Cameroon, and French governments were concerned that Cameroon's federal system of government could stand in their way of exploiting these reserves in accordance with Cameroon-France secret commercial accords of 1958 and 1959. As a condition to granting independence to the Republic of Cameroon in January 1960, France had entered into secret accords with Ahidjo that gave France priority rights of exploration and exploitation of all subsoil resources, including oil. These were the same accords that had contributed to the 1958 overthrow of André-Marie Bida, the first head of government of French Cameroon, who had vehemently refused to sign them or agree to a certain kind of independence from France. The conflict of interests in these oil reserves between France, Ahidjo, and the state of West Cameroon was triggered not by events within Cameroon, but rather by Algeria's decision to nationalize 4 foreign oil companies in June 1970. At issue in Algeria were the 1965 Evian Accords between France and Algeria, where the government of Algeria was coerced into accepting only 28 cents per barrel compared to 75 to 90 cents per barrel in other Middle Eastern or South American countries. Faced with economic decline, massive capital outflows, and rapidly increasing government spending, the government of Algeria quickly became dissatisfied with the Evian agreements and decided to break the agreements and take over foreign oil companies. With this background, French President Pompidou and French Minister of African Affairs Jacques Foccart visited Cameroon in 1971 and started working on a plan to address this potential threat to the French-Cameroon secret accords. On May 2nd, 1972, President Ahidjo met with the Central Committee of the Cameroon National Union, or CNU, the highest organ of the only political party in the Federal Republic of Cameroon, plans were put in motion for what would later be called the Peaceful Revolution of the People of Cameroon, the dismantling of the federal structure of government in favour of a unitary system of government, giving the president even more powers than he already had. On May 5th, 1972, President Ahidjo returned from a short trip to Paris, where he had met with his French legal advisors. In his briefcase from Paris were some very important documents, printed copies of a new constitution for the Federal Republic of Cameroon. He immediately called for an extraordinary session of the Federal Assembly in Yaoundé for May 6, 1972, with the purpose of proposing his new constitution. While one would normally expect the legislator of a country to be responsible for enacting new legislation, President Ahidjo had previously assumed the powers of the legislator and many other branches of government through a series of never-ending state of emergency declarations. Whether or not he had the power to enact new legislation, by 1972, President Ahidjo was so powerful that he personally represented the state, and anyone or any branch of government that dared question his authority ended up in solitary confinement in one of the many prisons around the country. However puzzling it may be that the president could unilaterally revise a country's constitution and himself propose a new constitution to the legislator or National Assembly, it is even more bizarre that the president was not himself the author of the new constitution he was proposing. The real authors of the proposed constitution were French technical advisors, one of whom was Jacques Rousseau, the man credited for writing the Republic of Cameroon's first constitution of February 1960. On May 6, 1972, President Ahidjo delivered his much anticipated speech to the Federal Assembly of Cameroon in Yaoundé. He acknowledged the great strides that the nation had made over the past decade since the reunification of southern Cameroons with the Republic of Cameroon in October 1961, following the UN-sanctioned plebiscite of February 11, 1961. President Ahidjo noted that over the past decade, the people of the states of West and East Cameroon had become reacquainted with one another in ways that had fostered national unity like never before. He said that the federal system was adopted during reunification with southern Cameroons, only to assure southern Cameroonians that the legacy they were bringing after more than 45 years of Anglo-Saxon administration would not be ignored, but would also be taken into consideration within the framework of a bilingual and multicultural state. However, he quickly focused on the need to address the federal structure of government and the costs it was imposing on the country. He noted that the federal structure of government required 3 governments and 4 houses of assembly. President Ahidjo was referring to the governments and houses of assembly of the federal, West and East state governments, as well as the House of Chiefs in the state of West Cameroon. He went on to bemoan the West Cameroon budget deficits, which were costing the federal government upwards of 2 billion francs CFA annually. He concluded that given all those facts, the federal structure of government had outlived its usefulness and, instead of being a catalyst for growth, had now become a major handicap.
Dans ces conditions, où les structures fédérales apparaissent comme un handicap au développement rapide du pays, où en revanche, le peuple camerounais a déjà consacré dans les faits sa profonde unité, ma conviction, mesdames et messieurs les députés, ma profonde conviction est que le moment est venu de dépasser l'organisation fédérale de l'État. J'ai, en conséquence, conscient de mes responsabilités à l'égard de la nation et devant l'histoire, décidé de consulter par voie de référendum le peuple camerounais, souverain et maître de son destin, sur l'institution immédiate d'un État unitaire.
He then set the date for the referendum for Saturday, May 20th, 1972, to ask the people of Cameroon whether or not to dismantle the federal system of government, and he invited the legislature and the country to review his draft constitution in the 2 weeks before the referendum. Only people not familiar with the internal politics of the Republic of Cameroon in the 1960s would be surprised that West Cameroon was said to be broke and was draining the coffers of the federal government. When Southern Cameroons joined the Republic of Cameroon on October 1st, 1961, it was a rich and vibrant territory. Southern Cameroons was by then exporting over £5 million of agricultural products to Europe and the US, including bananas, rubber, cocoa, palm oil and peppers, resulting in annual profits of close to £1 million. Its profits had enabled the territory to not only develop its infrastructure and provide services to its people, but had also enabled it to subsidise the government of Northern Cameroons for many years, sometimes in excess of £150,000. In 1961, Southern Cameroons was richer than the Republic of Cameroon on a per capita basis, especially considering that Cameroon was heavily dependent on aid from France. Although President Ahidjo had said only a federal system of government could have best served Southern Cameroons joining with the Republic of Cameroon in 1961, his unilateral action in 1972 proved how half-hearted the Republic of Cameroon's commitment had been. It was clear that the Republic had accepted a federal government in order to appease the people of Southern Cameroons and win their votes in the February 11th, 1961 plebiscite. So how come Southern Cameroons turned West Cameroon, went broke between 1961 and 1972? In this interval, President Ahidjo had deliberately dismantled all West Cameroon's economic and infrastructure companies to make West Cameroon appear to be financially dependent on East Cameroon. Powercam, a hydroelectricity dam at Yoke that previously electrified Southern Cameroons, was closed in favour of getting power from East Cameroon. Cameroon Bank, headquartered in Buea, was one of the strongest banks in the Cameroons, was closed. National Produce Marketing Board, that was responsible for selling all agricultural products from the CDC and all of the major plantations through the ports of Tico and Manfei, was closed, resulting in poor pricing of West Cameroon's produce sold through the port of Douala. Tico Airport, the international airport of Southern Cameroons, turned West Cameroon, was closed in favour of Douala Airport. Tico and Victoria natural seaports were closed. numerous trade organizations, financial cooperatives and credit unions, engineering and infrastructure organizations and companies were all shut down. By 1972, having intentionally crippled the robust economy that West Cameroon inherited from Southern Cameroons, it made sense that on paper at least, Ahidjo's claim that federalism and not his direct actions was the reason why the government of West Cameroon appeared to be in the red. Once more, West Cameroon, just like Southern Cameroons before it, was being called a poor territory. Ahidjo was simply taking a page out of the United Kingdom's playbook from 1960, when the UK told the United Nations and the nations of the world that Southern Cameroons was poor and would not be viable as an independent country. But it should be remembered that the United Kingdom, in its bid to make Southern Cameroons join Nigeria and bolster its economic interests, had told Nigeria that Southern Cameroons was rich and indeed a treasure trove. Article 47.1 of the Federal Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon stipulated that no amendments could be made that would impair the unity and integrity of the Federation. One could interpret this article to mean that no bill could have been introduced to dissolve the Federation itself, even if the President himself had submitted an amendment to dissolve the Federation. Article 47.3 stipulates that such an amendment should have been voted affirmatively not only in the Federal Assembly but equally by the East and West Cameroon Houses of Assembly. Knowing that he could not have gotten this way with the West Cameroon House of Assembly, President Ahidjo cunningly employed Article 2, which mentions the word referendum as a means to enact changes to the Constitution. However, even if Article 2 could have been stretched to serve as a means to make changes to the Constitution, it did not and could not have overridden the very clear language of Article 47. The legal backdoor that President Ahidjo relied on, therefore, was a law passed on the 10th of November 1969 prescribing the conditions and the procedure of the referendum. But even this law should not and could not have overridden Article 47.3. In the prevailing political climate, where dissidents were locked up without due process, no one dared stand up to President Ahidjo's blatant violation of the federal constitution. At the conclusion of his speech on May 8, 1972, all 10 West Cameroon members of Federal House of Assembly walked out together with Jongu Fontia and gathered at Bernard Fonlong's house in Yaoundé, leaving all 40 French Cameroon members of Parliament in the house. Tension built up rapidly as President Ahidjo rapidly ordered armed troops to surround Bernard Fonlong's house while negotiating with the members of Parliament. After careful reflection, Fonlong advised that they were ill-prepared and outnumbered, and further resistance could have unintended consequences. Bernard Fonlong counselled that they should return to the assembly and leave the war to be fought by their forebearers. Days before the perilous May 6 speech, the government had raised a false alarm of an imminent invasion into West Cameroon from Nigeria, leading to a massive deployment of troops to major towns across the state of West Cameroon. It was not politically wise or physically safe to hold and express views different from the president, let alone oppose, in words or deeds, any of his plans or actions. It was generally known, but highly concealed, in the dictatorial climate of the time, that there was a groundswell of opposition throughout West Cameroon. Ahidjo's speech on May 6th automatically and unceremoniously disbanded the East and West Cameroon Houses of Assembly as well as the House of Chiefs, none of which ever again formally met. The mutiny was muted and all trace removed from the media. Throughout the referendum campaign season of 12 days, everybody was advised against casting no votes. Civil servants were transferred across the national territory to spread Ahidjo's good news, pushing the yes chorus. They sounded a warning note to all government divisions, all local government areas, that producing a single no vote would result in untold reprisals. Although the government has records of having printed no ballots, on May 20th, 1972, voters discovered that only ballot papers bearing the words yes and we were available. If no ballot papers existed, they were clearly not used in voting offices, if not everywhere, certainly in the majority of voting offices across Cameroon. By midday on May the 20th, 1972, President Ahidjo was already calling the referendum a victory. 2 weeks later, he would sign into law the new constitution on June the 2nd, 1972. That was not written or reviewed by the Federal Assembly, not approved or signed by either the East or West Houses of Assemblies, not signed by the Prime Minister of the federal states of West and East Cameroon. Following the sweeping victory, the population, especially in former West Cameroon, was severely repressed by police forces. Security checks, raids, roadblocks, and police cordons in neighbourhoods increased. Anybody who did not have a voting card in their pocket was arrested. The government and military flexed their muscles to deter any public or even private protests against the illegal dissolution of the Federation, having been denied the option of outright independence by the United Kingdom and having reluctantly participated in the UK and UN sanctioned plebiscite on February the 11th, 1961, resulting in the joining with Cameroon in a federal republic. May the 20th, 1972 is hardly a day of celebration for the people of the former Southern Cameroons. Rather, it is a day that holds little meaning, because it represents the day when the federal system of government that should have guaranteed their diversity and way of life, their educational and legal systems, and much more, was dismantled, accelerating their marginalization within the now united Republic of Cameroon. The incompatibility of the France-Cameroon secret accords and the rights of the state of West Cameroon with regard to the allocation of revenues from oil and other resources is at the root of the dismantling of the Federation. If this narrative seems far-fetched, the actions of the government in later years only served to reinforce these arguments. The overthrow of the system of government and a return to the unitary system gave the president all the powers to enforce the secret 1959 accords with impunity. In later years, an oil refinery would be built in the coastal town of Victoria by Elf, Total, Gulf and Mobil. To downplay the town's British roots, in 1982 the town's name would be changed from Victoria, so called by English missionary Alfred Saker in 1858, to Limbay, as a cautionary measure by the unitary government against insurrection by English-speaking locals. The Limbay finery's oil is piped to and stored in Douala, in the French-speaking part of Cameroon, and city taxes from oil exploration and refining are paid not to the town of Limbay in English-speaking Cameroon, but rather to the city of Douala. The refinery in Limbay is overwhelmingly staffed by Cameroonians from French-speaking Cameroon and the rest from English-speaking Cameroon and other countries. These are revenue-sharing imbalances and hiring practices that would never have occurred under a federal system of government. Today, what was formerly Southern Cameroon's and subsequently West Cameroon produces over 85% of Cameroon's total oil revenue. Once more, rather than people determining the future of their land had come to define the future of the people. As difficult a pill as May 20th, 1972 was for West Cameroonians to swallow, they chose to rise above it. They chose to continue to hold their heads high, and they chose to live and fight this grave injustice another day. As Bernard von Long wisely said on May 8th, 1972, the West Cameroonians chose to leave the war to be fought by their forebearers.
At www.acnlive.net. This is a production of the Ambazonia Communication Network in collaboration with Menda Films. We invite you to look forward to our next episode as we continue to explore the historical path of the former British Trust territory of Southern Cameroon, now called Ambazonia. Special thanks to our donors and to all viewers like you. For more information on this program, please contact our partners Menda Films on www.mendafilms.com or visit us at www.acnlive.net.
And property. And this problem will never be solved. We give and take has to be the principle that we put in place. Listen to each other. All of us at any given time, we were wrong. We have to sit round table, forgive each other, and work out means and ways which will enable us to get out of this. Violence has never solved any problem anyway. This is my conviction. You see, madam. So I am convinced. People will trust me. People will trust me because I do what I say. Item number 1 in my agenda, federalism, dual nationality, how to solve the Anglophone problem, because you have 20% of our economy is brought to a halt just because of this conflict, which is completely wrong. For how long will it last? I was the first to say that there was no Anglophone problem. I did it, madam, because this is the information I received. But when I realized that the information put to my disposal was wrong, the root cause of this problem was not brought to my knowledge. And when I discovered it, I apologize. I apologize because I was misled by those who gave me the information. When the root cause was brought to my knowledge, I said, yes, there are problems. They have to be fixed through dialogue, consultation. I did it, madam.
Yes. Okay, so
Le ministre de l'Intérieur du Cameroun, Paul Atanganji, vient de lancer une menace claire. Il accuse Issa Tchiroma, candidat de l'opposition, de vouloir proclamer sa victoire depuis sa région. Et il prévient, s'il ose, il ira l'arrêter en pleine nuit, chez lui. Selon lui, la campagne se termine le 12 octobre au soir et il n'y aura plus de place pour les jeux. Est-ce encore de la démocratie ou on a déjà basculé ailleurs? Qu'en pensez-vous? Le ministre de l'Intérieur du Cameroun, Paul Atanganji, vient de lancer une menace claire. Il accuse Issa Tchiroma, candidat de l'opposition, de vouloir proclamer sa victoire depuis sa région. Et il prévient, s'il ose, il ira l'arrêter en pleine nuit, chez lui. Selon lui, la campagne se termine le 12 octobre au soir et il n'y aura plus de place pour les jeux. Est-ce encore de la démocratie ou on a déjà basculé ailleurs? Qu'en pensez-vous? Le ministre de l'Intérieur du Cameroun, Paul Atanganji, vient de lancer une menace claire. Il accuse Issa Tchiroma, candidat de l'opposition, de vouloir proclamer sa victoire depuis sa région. Et il prévient, s'il ose, il ira l'arrêter en pleine nuit, chez lui. Selon lui, la campagne se termine le 12 octobre au soir et il n'y aura plus de place pour les jeux. Est-ce encore de la démocratie ou on a déjà basculé ailleurs? Qu'en pensez-vous?
For today's presidential election, the Minister of Territorial Administration received accreditation requests from 165 national and foreign organizations, diplomatic missions, NGOs, civil society, and religious associations. The Minister of Territorial Administration issued 5,575 accreditations to observers deployed across the country's 10 regions. The observers will do their work or must have done their work freely, but in compliance with the laws of the land. As late as yesterday evening, when campaigns officially came to an end, administrative authorities provided converging evidence of attempts by certain candidates to publish the results of the presidential election using platforms and applications that are not provided for by the laws in force. I want to take this opportunity to reiterate to candidates that whosoever is tempted to engage in this criminal activity should stop before it's too late. That is the red line that must not be crossed. Candidates for presidential election should be reminded that they all signed a code of good conduct drafted by Elections Cameroon, which requires them to respect the entire electoral process and the laws of the republic. The administration will take drastic measures to put an end to any attempt of fabricating fake election results and publishing them on illegal platforms. Defaulters, regardless of their political status or social rank, shall face the heavy arm of the law. As it has always been the case, there will obviously be complaints and observations from candidates after the presidential election. However, the administration's position is consistent. Candidates must use legal channels to file their complaints, observations, or grievances in due time. That is the path of wisdom. That is a sign of political maturity and sense of responsibility. The head of state, His Excellency President Paul Biya, had given firm instructions for a well-organized, credible, and peaceful presidential election held in a secure environment. I wish to assure the national and the international communities that the presidential election of today took place in the 10 regions without any major incident. I can say it was hitch-free. henceforth, the leniency observed during the campaign period is over. I must emphasize that break time is over. Only the vote counting bodies will continue with the process. These are the divisional and national vote counting commissions, which all have a well-defined working time frame. Subsequently, the Constitutional Council shall take over until the official proclamation of election results. No action out of this legal framework shall be tolerated. All attempts to disrupt the electoral process at the end of the polls will be considered by Minat as a casus belli and treated as such. I would like to conclude my statement with the warning that the head of state, His Excellency President Paul Biya, issued to unscrupulous candidates during the 1992 presidential elections, and I quote, "Nobody should joke with Cameroon." The head of state's statement warning in 1992 still applies to the present circumstances. Defaulters should be on their guard. As I said, we have come to the end of the process, and only the legal institutions will continue the process, and political leaders should wait in their different areas for things to continue. The law shall prevail at all costs. Thank you.
Mais si les gars résistent, on va aller jusqu'au bout. On va aller jusqu'au bout. On va effectivement armer les réacteurs. Ça va être tiré. Puisqu'on a déjà les codes.
Are you announcing possibility of chaos should the current regime is maintained in power?
Tout est sur la table. Les billets doivent partir.
Should we not be talking about a peaceful transition?
Il n'y a rien à ajouter. Tout est sur la table.
Nous sommes à 4 mois de l'élection présidentielle. Quel est le message que vous envoyez ce soir aux millions de Camerounais?
Non, les Camerounais n'ont rien à voir dans tout ça. Ils ont été tellement résilients, patients, endurants. C'est à la famille du président Biya que je m'adresse. Aidez-le à partir. Aidez-le à quitter le pouvoir. Aidez-le dans la dignité humaine. Soyez... Parce que ce monsieur a déjà tout donné, il ne peut pas donner davantage. Et je prie les hommes en tenue de ne pas se mêler de la politique. Je prie les administrateurs, les gouverneurs et tout ce monde-là, au moment de nous laisser tranquilles. Qu'ils laissent les politiciens travailler. Qu'ils laissent l'administration, qu'eux-mêmes aillent en retraite. Parce qu'après, on fera moi je dis, on fera des audits. Tous ces retraités qui refusent de partir là, ils vont reverser ce qu'ils ont pris. Hein. Parce que quelqu'un est là, ça fait 10 ans, il est à la retraite, mais il ne part pas. Il y aura des audits dans l'administration, on fera ça.
Allah hoy nutan mbedo fira kaya do agare mbedo fira kaya do motaji soje tata ite ndia do ka yo binga be puissance de yo fini alo be puissance de kon bara rimbe andelo kon bara rimbe andelo la belo bo jipi Allah hoy nutan kon bara rimbe andelo kon bara rimbe andelo na belo bo jipi Allah waynu dan
procès-verbaux. On doit changer ça.
La jeunesse, on ne peut
On doit changer ça. C'est pas normal. C'est pas possible. À ton âge, tu n'as même pas 35 ans. Tu commences à faire le faux. On doit changer ça.
On va changer ça. Non, laissez qu'on ne connaissait pas grand frère.
Non, il n'y a pas qu'on ne connaissait pas. Il n'a pas 5 ans. Il n'a pas 5 ans. On change ça. Non, le chef d'État a parlé. La suite, c'est quoi? On change.
Avant 16 heures, la commission électorale. Avec l'une. Il n'a encore pas vu le mélange avec l'une. Un membre de la commission
notre joie et notre vie, à toi l'amour et le grand bonheur.
the